What is up? Welcome to this week's episode of Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. Today, I am joined by a very busy man whom some of you may know. He does a little of everything, and he's been involved in almost a little bit of everything. Justin Pearson, welcome to the show. I was going to say what you're from, but there's such a long list. I'll let you go ahead and say where you want people to know you're from. Currently Death Club. Currently in Death Club, for sure.
Yeah, Def Club and Planet B and Satanic Planet are my current projects. I'm also known for being in the Locust, Swing Kids, Dead Cross, some other bands. But yeah, those are the other three are my active bands. I run 31G.
Yep.
And I do a bunch of other stuff that's not musical, but those are the main things.
Where people from the website may know you from, yeah.
I don't know where the people from your website know me from because it's before this started we were talking about the comment section, so it's pretty rough. I'm like, who the fuck are these people? So
are we gonna jump right into that? You want to just keep that conversation rolling, or do you want to wait a little bit?
Sure, let's go for it.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I am constantly anytime I get coverage. So when you took over it, I was like, before I knew all this, it all makes sense now, but there was this shift where I was like, oh shit, Lambgoat's kind of getting rad and covering all of like stuff that I'm involved in or my friends, like in the more weirder kind of avant-garde stuff, and not just like metal. Because let's face it, the metal community only likes metal one way, and it's you can't steer out of that direction.
Yeah.
So like it was a trip because people were like, they were like, check out the comments, and it was pretty fucking brutal. And I have like probably the thickest skin that I think a human can get, so I'm pretty good. But like sometimes I'm like, dude, this is fucked. Like for other people that are reading this, or that like if you're a fan of something and people are just shitting all over it, it's kind of mean. And so I was asking you about the anonymous thing because I feel like it leads it lends like for people to be chicken shits, and I think that like I think if you're gonna talk shit, you should be able to accept, because I'm fucking 48, so like normally when people would talk shit, it'd be like in front of me, right. And then the consequences play out, and I think
for sure.
Not that I'm saying like violence, but no one's gonna talk shit to your face unless they have the fucking balls or the guts to back it up. So I'm like, oh yeah, online you can say all this fucking really crazy shit, like tell people to go kill themselves, or fucking tell them like very questionably
of course,
racist, sexist, homophobic shit, whatever. I'm like, dude, fuck these people, these chicken shit people that are like I say, like, let them be public, and then fucking they'll get their ass handed to them. I get it, and some people want to just be dicks for the sake of being dicks, but like that doesn't help the world. This world's fucked right now. Like we're in yet another war, and like the fucking environment's taking a shit on us. We're fucking the planet up, like, and then there's just like dicks. Being dicks for no reason. I'm like, dude, you gotta probably stop.
Well, to kind of answer a little bit of that, obviously we kept the anonymous comments because Alex's reign had the anonymous comments, and that was a big part of Lambgoat. He did turn them off for a while, and I think more people were upset by that visit Lambgoat. But again, that being said, like, we moderate the comments more now. Like, we have a moderator for the comments, which is something that's new, that's not been before. Also, the anonymous comments are like part of the culture of Lambgoat, right? So like they've been a part of the website since 99 or whenever the comments were started to appear on the website. So it kind of is like we don't want to get rid of that just because that is one of the things that's been around for a long period of time. There are things that we're doing to kind of correct those comments that are like more negative, like racist comments, misogynistic comments, any of those kind of really offensive things where people are just trying to fucking get a rise out of anybody and everybody, right? But again, not saying that those comments should be condoned. There are comments that are part of the culture in Lambgoat. Not saying the racist comments or the misogynistic comments or any of those comments, like the hateful ones, but there is kind of a stigma of how to comment on Lambgoat. And if we're going to keep the anonymous comments around, and we're doing other things, and I can't really explain all of what we're doing for the comment stuff, but like the moderation, I have no problem with. But there's other features that are going to come up in the next hopefully in within the next year that we're kind of trying to integrate that will better help field those comments, negate the really bad ones. But again, if anyone does have an issue with the comments, a particular comment or comments in general, we do have a report feature, and it's working better than ever now because we do have a moderator, like I was saying, but he has to moderate the entire website, not only the post you're looking at, but a lot of other shit. Yeah. So when people report a comment, it goes right to the top, and then that's looked at almost immediately. And then that's not saying if you report a comment that it will be deleted, because there is like a guideline, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I understand that under the guise of censorship. Yeah, of course.
Right. And like, we're not and again, Lambgoat's not going to be the fucking flag for censorship or anything like that. Yeah. But, the way we look at it too is, and this isn't, the best example, but like people are always like, have a face or having a face and name connected to the comment or whatever. And that's totally valid. Right. But we can go to like any Facebook page about anything, and there's people connected with their face and their name and full on, and they're the same kind of comments, right? So it's like it just feels like that's just a part of the world, and we will try to moderate that as best as possible. But also, again, when I speak about the culture of commenting on Lambgoat, it's kind of like horrible comedians trying jokes that are just fucking missing left and right. You know what I mean?
Totally. But so I mean, also too, it's like I don't know if it's like multiple people or just one fucking turd. It's really kind of crazy. It's like I don't understand. But the thing is that because you can't tell if it's like one person opposed.
No. We can.
Or five.
We can.
Oh, you can, but I can't. So I'm like, is this just one asshole? Yeah, and I would like to know how many assholes are talking shit. But there are times when I read it and like, it is. It's funny that you said comedians, because I'm like, dude, like they're like talking shit about me, saying like I live in my mom's basement, and I'm like, oddly enough, we don't have basements in Southern California, but I do have a basement, and I don't live in it because it's my house. And I don't know. It's like, that's a stupid old joke that doesn't seem to really work in Southern California. So it's like, oh, joke's on you, dickhead. But I think like the more important thing is like when people are like saying like transphobic shit or things that are like, racist shit, whatever, like things that are like kind of harmful to people that maybe don't have the thick skin.
Right. No, I get that. But again, to kind of parlay off of what you're saying, that whole like, and I don't want to say like, I'm going to just focus on what you just mentioned, like the trans stuff, right? So my approach to that is there are people that are trans in bands, and so I'm going to post about them regardless. I'm going to have the anonymous comments regardless too. So we're going to go down that street and we're going to battle that together. But again, like we're trying to not change the culture overnight, but like you said, notice there's a difference and stuff, and people have said that throughout meeting people and talking with people in real life or on this podcast or in general. So we're one step at a time. It's not going to go overnight. You know what I mean? So like one step at a time. But again, like there are bands that don't want to get posted on Lambgoat for that said reason, where they're like worried about the comments and this, that, the other stuff. To which I say, I don't care if you don't want to get posted. Lambgoat has a thing. Like the way I look at Lambgoat is a database of music, right? And this niche of music that we're all passionate about is very small, and it's very new in the grand scheme of like music history. So if I can database as much as I possibly can that happens and goes on, like, because I've inherited a large database of stuff, right? So if I can continue that database going and growing it and adding people of color, people of different identities and all this kinds of stuff, that may be new somewhat to Lambgoat, right? But we gotta break through that wall and trudge through the shit together. And so and bands have said they don't want us to post about them, and
that's crazy,
right? And there are certain people that really don't. There's large bands that hate us and are very vocal about it and don't want to be posted, and there's like new up and coming bands that feel the same way. But again, not to shit on anybody or hurt anyone's feelings, I'm going to do it regardless, because there's a duty to the audience, I feel, and there's a duty to the namesake, and there's we're trying to do more than before, and if we've got to take a bunch of lumps, then we're taking the lumps,
Sure, but that's crazy too that like a band, large or small, wouldn't want you to cover it unless you are the one being like, fuck this trans band, blah, 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 blah. But instead you're like, here's this band, and then all the comments happen, and that's what they're
But
against.
that's going to happen
that is
either way on any platform.
totally, yeah. And the thing that one lesson that I learned, and it was very hard learning this in the early 2000s or late 90s, early 2000s with the Locust, was we got shit on by everyone all the time, everywhere. And that only made us more popular. And it maybe got pretty violent at times, but like for the most part, it just propelled our band into like everyone's fucking living room, like, or whatever, their sound system. Like people were like, oh, this band that we need to hate, we're gonna fucking promote. And I think like, yeah, I say bring it on. Like I would hope that the diverse platform, or like I guess the diverse landscape of bands now would all welcome that. Like let's fucking take them on, you know, and like give it, because the more exposure, even if it's in the wrong avenue, the better it is for the fight, I guess, you know.
Right. Whatever you're standing for, whatever your band may not stand for anything. Your band just may make like fucking party music for hardcore metal kids or whatever, you know what I mean? But if your band has like a purpose or whatever, even if you don't want to get posted on X website or whatever, that website, you know, has, whether our website or another website, has an audience and has a reach far bigger than yours. So it's like
press is press.
And again, we just, like you said, we just show what's going on. Like
that's another.
The thing with Lambgoat is unbiased. We're like, we try to be especially, well, at least our tenure, like our reign is like, we're unbiased. This is the information. That's it. We're not going to be like, fuck this guy, or that guy was, you know, not the smartest thing, or that this incident sucked. But you know, we're just gonna, this is the information and you deal with it.
But that, when you took over Lambgoat and I kind of saw like the negative comments, I was like, oh, that's why that website's rad. Like I felt like, you know, I don't know, it made me feel like, oh, cool, I can align myself with that site. I get it. Where like a lot of other sites, not that they would be, you were in a unique position, but I kind of identified with the fact that you were getting shit on, and I appreciated it.
I did. And the thing is, like, you know, when bands talk about getting shit on and stuff, like, you have to understand, you may get one post every couple of months on the website, or, you know, a few a year or whatever. I'm there all the time. So people are talking shit all the time. And like, you know, my mom died 13 years ago. So that gets brought up all the time. You know, I'm fat, I'm lumpy, I'm this, I'm that. You know, it's all, I've heard it all. So if you're worried
it's
about...
It's the lowest common denominator too. Right. It's like,
it's nothing that's really getting into my skin or whatever like that. It's, like you said, it's funny to me because they're talking about me, and it's like, why are you just like, you're thinking about these comments to post on the website in your off time, spare time, and you're just like constantly thinking about
oddly enough, if you're fat, that's one thing. If I'm skinny, I'm a pedophile or something, you know, or like I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh no, I mean, I've heard it all, so it's just whatever.
But I will say this, like I have an issue with the left too, because, or, you know, I don't want to say the right and the left, but like the people that are like the Karens of the left, you know, because we're fucking like Def Club's constantly getting shit on for the name Def Club. Like, is anyone actually deaf? And it's like, oh fuck, here we go. And it's pretty crazy how much shit dumb white people have. They got a lot of fucking spare time, dude. You know what I mean? A lot of spare time. And you know, even though I'm based in Florida, I'm middle of the road kind of guy. Nah, Florida's cool, dude. You know what I mean? I just came from California. That's a little weirder than Florida, but like I told, like, because, you know, Dylan lives out there and I stayed with him for a while out there in August, and I was like, honestly, it's not as bad as like news makes it out to be, which I fucking knew that was going to be the case. I expect to go to San Francisco and just see piles of shit all over the, you know, the sidewalks and all this and that, and it was nothing like that. It was rather, you know, pleasant. Some of the conversations I was overhearing are vastly different than the conversations you would hear like here. I remember we were at dinner or something like that, and we were talking about something, and the people next to us, there's like 4 younger people, they were having like this really in-depth conversation about like all types of like social issues, like climate change and this, that, the other. And I remember hearing like, what's your power stance on this, that, or the other? And that caught my ear because I was like, what are they talking about? Power stance. You know, all I know in power stance is like metal, you know, like how to hold your guitar and fucking stand on stage, power stance. So I'm like listening in, and I go, Dylan, they're talking about the world issues, and me and you are talking about Furnace Fest, Andrew WK at Furnace Fest, dude. Like, what the fuck is there's a disconnect somewhere, man. Yeah.
But yeah, Florida's not as bad. But I'm middle of the road kind of guy, and I lean left and right on different subjects, and two-party system is kind of stupid in my opinion. So whatever. But
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I lean really like I hate how like there were some comments on the site where people are like fucking Democrats or you voted for Obama. I'm like fucking dude, Democrats are fucking lame. Like I'm way more left than that shit. Those guys are fucking posers. Fuck
yeah,
all of you, Like
yeah.
I'm offended because you're saying I'm a fucking Democrat, and I'm like I'm lefter than motherfucking Obama or whatever,
Yeah.
or you voted for Biden. I'm like, dude, you want to fucking go there? Like, you're such an asshole. It's just the lowest common denominator. Like someone saying you're fat or skinny. It's like, oh fuck, all right, well whatever. It's just
Yeah.
let you do your thing.
Yeah, and then luckily I feel like out of the group that kind of inherited the Lambgoat situation, luckily I have the thickest skin because I don't know if the other dudes, if they were forward facing. And again, I'm like I was the only, there was no one knew what Lambgoat was or looked like until like the first episode of the podcast. So everyone thought I was Alex for so long, and it dawned on me that I was like, oh, no one's been the forward-facing entity for the website ever.
Yeah.
And so that also opened it up to large amounts of this dog shit. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But again, I've gone through it. I took over the website even after all that is said and done. So the goals that we have for it and where we want to be is not going to deter us.
Well, also like at the end of the day, like we're doing things like you're doing all this crazy shit, this huge publication. I play in bands or we'll do whatever. And then it's funny because then there's like some dick that we don't know who probably works at fucking Arby's. They come home and like just talks a bunch of shit.
Yeah, if he has a job.
Or she, I don't want to be sexist.
If that person,
if they have a job, let's say they. Anyhow, like it's like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. You work at fucking Arby's and you're gonna talk a bunch of shit about whatever. It's like that's cool. No offense to people that work at Arby's, but it's just that was just an example. I apologize if I offended anyone, but there's that. So yeah, I just trip out. I'm like, they wasted their fucking good time talking shit because there's a lot of stuff I don't like, and I can't be bothered to comment on it.
Right.
Even in my own brain, like let alone publicly, and take time to.
And that's the thing. And again, with the comments, like the comments aren't like out and available for everyone to see. You know what I mean? Like, you gotta click into the comment section. So in theory, that's kind of like your TOS, right? Terms of service. Like you're venturing yourself into like the netherworld, So there's things that we kind of like use as like, oh well, you're kind of going into that knowing what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've
been guilty of saying like posting links, being like, yo, check out this rad press. You gotta check out the comment section. It's fucking brutal. And then everyone's like, holy shit, I'm like, this is the Wild West or whatever. And I'm like, it is kind of, but
and that's kind of like the allure and attraction of it a little bit. And like,
hold up, I already know. I know what I'm doing. I'm like, go read this because you're gonna fucking get upset and it'll be amusing or whatever, or something. It'll be something. But
again, I thank you for having a thick skin and rolling with those punches and understanding what it is. But you've been around the website for quite a long period of time, or you've known of it for some time in your past. But like, these are just internet words, guys. They're not real things. You know what I mean? Like, again, they're really shitty comedians trying shitty jokes, and they miss 95% of the time. But hey, every now and then, someone will post a one-liner, and I'll crack up. You know what I mean? So,
me too. I can appreciate a good shit talking, but it's pretty rare. It's like, if you're gonna say like the fat thing or the mom in your mom's basement thing, it's like that's just so dumb. Yeah. It's like playing a show and someone saying like play the fast one. It's like, do you know how many times the Locust has heard that, or any band? Yeah. Or play one the drummer knows. It's like, dude, But you know what? Like, if someone just says like, hey, that sounds stupid, then you're like, all right, that's a good heckle. That's simple. You got it.
Mm-hmm. But like you said, the kind of person to comment in general on the internet is kind of wild, and you know what I mean. Like, I don't comment on a lot of things. This is fucking pointless. So
I don't comment on anything unless it's like a picture of a cute dog or something.
Yeah. Well, Justin, you guys just got off of a tour not that long ago. We're going to get into some music. 20 minutes into this music podcast, or music-based podcast. We'll get into some music stuff. You guys just got off the road with Converge and Elizabeth Color Wheel. How'd that all go for you?
Good. Elizabeth Color Wheel dropped.
Right, that's right. Once I was saying it, I was like, I remember posting a story that they dropped and got replaced by somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I mean, I've known the Converge guys for so long, and um, I've I love them as people and musicians and their music, but it felt different this time in a really good way because I think maybe I don't know, like we're older obviously, and it was really nice. Like I remember like one of the last nights, like Nate and I were talking about how like it's crazy that we're at this age still doing these things and just appreciating the fact that we are able to still be in each other's lives after so much time. Not to sound too like woo woo or whatever,
Hmm.
but it was just rad. It felt good because the last time I toured with Converge was with some girls, and it was just a different
Nice.
landscape. We were both younger, but for me personally, I had a different agenda, and this was just it just felt like very sincere, and it felt very much like family, being on tour with them, and
Yeah.
it was great, and I love that band, and I think that they are very relevant, and I appreciate them that they recognize Def Club as something to align themselves with, and it was cool. It was a lot of fun. All the shows are great. Um, yeah, it was awesome. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
So
Converge obviously is the. It's wild to see. I talked about in the last podcast with the guys from Hopes Fall, and it's wild because like I'm 40 now. I'm sure you said you're 48. We're at like the age of like our parents from like when we were younger, like much younger,
yeah,
and like I think about like my dad being like 20, early 20s, and I'm like, a young kid, and then when he's 30, he's still listening to like Led Zeppelin, like that's his band. But in theory, when I think back to that time in like the 80s, they weren't like that far removed, right? They were only like 10, 15 years out of the game when, I'm cognizant in the world, like, when I'm out and about in the world. And he said something. I used to be a big Limp Bizkit fan, admittedly, and he said something like that band will never be around in 20 years or something like that, right? And that stuck with me forever. I don't know why, but that him saying that stuck with me forever. And then a couple years ago, I started realizing I was like, dude, I'm still listening to all those same bands that I listened to when I was 15 to 20, and that's over 20 years now. And like, I'm thinking to myself, are those bands like my Led Zeppelin? You know what I mean? And how different it is from like my dad, my dad's music world to my music world. It's crazy.
sure. But also too, I think with our parents, they didn't have the internet, so
For sure.
their vast their way to their I guess their reach, or like the way that they could search for stuff was limited. Where now it's I think for us it's a little bit different.
Too
Um,
much. There's too much.
well, yeah, sure, but also we just have the ability to look deeper. Where like I don't know if my parents would have went to a record store and like dug through
Right,
vinyl and
right. No,
found like
mine
some
definitely
deep
aren't.
cut.
Mine definitely
Yeah,
aren't.
yeah. They're like Led Zeppelin, cool, I'm done.
It's on
And
the radio. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, radio, exactly.
Yeah. And the thing about
Um,
that, I always think about like what other bands are in garages while the Beatles are playing. Like while the
yeah.
Beatles are huge, what other bands are in like the underground? What other bands are in like the underground for like any of those rock bands like
Yeah.
that never saw the light of day?
Well, but that's a really good point because I remember like getting into punk and hardcore through Thrasher, and I think that was like almost equivalent to like a radio because yeah, I heard on the radio. The things that got me on the path I was like shit like Ferris Bueller's Day Off had Sig Sig Sputnik and Yellow in it. Like that was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm into that weird synth shit. Or Thrasher magazine was skate rock. If it wasn't for fucking skateboarding, I would never have. I mean, I might have got into punk, but I was like, it was really about Thrasher and then skate rock, and then all look cool, had skulls and shit. I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, cool. And then next thing you know, Septic Death and The Accused, and then I was like set. And it was weird because my mom tripped out on me as a kid, like wanting to go to concerts at age 12 and not realizing like what it was. She's like, you want to see a band called The Cramps? Okay, cool, I'll take you and drop you off. And like didn't think much about it, didn't know much about it, thankfully, because if she knew that it was what it was, she'd probably be like, there's no fucking way you're going to see
Right.
a guy stick a microphone down his pants and like hump the floor and shit. So I was like, okay, but I needed that, but I don't know how it happened. I don't know, like why didn't our parents go do that like weird thing, or the like not just Led Zeppelin thing, like the garage
Because they were
band.
being sold the American Dream, like when the American Dream was kind of like somewhat attainable. Like at the 50s, the American Dream wasn't. The 50s to the 70s, there's not a lot of nothing like the internet came along and changed the fucking
Sure.
landscape of the entire world. So it's like, for us, it's a good and bad thing where we don't live in that time, but we
Yeah.
also, you know, live in this time. And like I said on the last podcast, as bad as everything is going on, I think that all that kind of was going on prior. We just hear about all that stuff more. But in reality, like, you're also at the spearhead of like the best time to be alive. So it's like a weird juxtaposition
Yeah.
juxtaposition, because you do know about all the bad shit like all over, but there's also a lot of good shit that wasn't around 10, 15, 20, 100 years ago either. So it's like, I don't know, you know, you're in between all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a trip.
So Def Club. So yeah, how did you like? Let's go through your journey into like music. Obviously, because you're watching the Cramps and you know you're seeing that kind of live show, which clearly infected, you know, how you perform or how your bands perform. Because you know you guys are kind of spastic, sporadic, and animated. So, like, let's talk about like your journey into like music. You know, getting dropped off at the Cramps shows by your mom and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty weird. I remember I had gone to a couple of shows, and I lived in Phoenix, so I was out in San Diego visiting. My dad had died, and my mom came out here for a vacation with me to like her new boyfriend lived out here. I was like, oh, I want to go see this band. They're playing in San Diego, and it was crazy because didn't really like. I'd only been to like I saw Shaka Khan when I was 7,
Nice.
and then I went to like a couple like pretty crummy local shows in Phoenix. Like no offense, but it was like JFA and stuff like that. It wasn't very great, but
Wasn't
it
your
was the
thing.
Cramps
Wasn't
that
your
did
thing.
it to me. I mean, it was my thing. I think on record, but like being there didn't like. It just seemed. I don't know. It was weird. Like I feel like I had these like really high standards right away.
Yeah, you weren't
It wasn't
captivated
until
by it.
not like I thought I would be. Yeah.
okay.
So it was the Cramps though, because there's a lot of things. So one, I remember like going right up to the front and standing next to these huge PA speakers and didn't realize that like I needed ear protection. So like my left ear just got fucked, which goes full circle to Def Club. Yeah. So my left ear got super fucked because I remember the next day being like, I feel weird. Like I felt like, you know, like my equilibrium was off. I did not know. I was 12. I didn't understand the science of like, oh, don't stand like 5 inches from this PA speaker for the whole set. But I was like captivated by the performance of the band. Like everything was so wild and seemed very creative and unique. And then I met them that night, and that was the other thing where I was like, oh shit, you guys are like, you know, regular people, weirdo regular people that like were very kind to me and very welcoming to this like 12-year-old kid. And it just changed a lot of stuff. And then I think I just started tripping out on like their presence and their style and their like what they were, their vibe, you know. And then I just went down this rabbit hole of like bands and what I was into.
How did you find those bands? And what time, like what era time frame is this? Like 90s or?
It's late 80s. Like, well, the late 80s is when I really got into music, and I think I already kind of liked music. You know, I remember like hearing like Styx, Mr. Roboto, and I fucking loved Van Halen 1984. It was like there was a lot of shit that I was like already into, really like appreciative of music stuff. But it wasn't, you know, like when you see, like for me, when I would see Van Halen in 1984, so that was, what was I, 9? It was fine, but it was really hard for me to like connect on a personal level. Like I would see these dudes in these like huge arenas, and I was okay, it was cool, but like it wasn't until like I saw the Cramps where I was like, oh, this is obtainable. This is like, I felt like I was part of the event, which goes into like, you know, punk and hardcore.
Was it the size of the room that you were in, maybe? Because like obviously Van Halen's playing a much bigger room.
It could be that, but I still felt like I'm in the audience and there's the band. But then I was like, oh, this is shifted. Like I can just go meet the band.
Oh yeah,
and
okay.
like, and then it was almost immediately after that I was going to local shows and seeing local bands and meeting people that were in bands. I don't know, there's so many things that changed the trajectory of how I perceive things. So I don't know if I was actually in my first band yet, but I remember there's this footage of there's a Fugazi show on online somewhere, and Pitchfork played, which is John Reese from Drive by J, who's other band. and John Reese is like outside, and he's like doing his shtick. I don't know if you know John. He's very like charismatic, and he's like, "We're at the Fugazi show. We're gonna interview these young punkers." And he like goes, and like me and Jose Palafox, some swing kids, and our friend Charlie Clayton were standing there, and he comes over to like interview us. It was weird, and it was like, oh shit, like we know this guy, John Reese. He's in this cool ass band who's opening he's in Pitchfork opening for Fugazi, and he's like treating us like a human being and like recognizing us. And we were so psyched to be on this video. And then we went in and saw Fugazi. And for me, it was like seeing like, so what, this is probably like, I mean, this is like 88 or 89. I think it was 88, maybe, but maybe 89. I don't know. Seeing Fugazi was like all the quintessential shithead punkers were there, you know, and you know, they were there because Ian was in Minor Threat, and that's fine. But they were like being fuckheads, you know, and like at one point, Ian stopped the set or the song and was like, called this guy out, and maybe he didn't stop the set. Okay, sorry, I'm confusing the show. Some guy keeps yelling in between the songs, play a fucking Minor Threat song or what, I don't know. He might have said a certain one, but play Minor Threat. And I remember Ian just being like, hey, fuck you, go home and listen to Minor Threat on your record player. And he's like told the guy to leave, and he said, give him his $5 and just go home. And I was like, holy shit, that guy could be in a band and treat the fans like that. That's awesome. And I was like, this is really, really cool that he can like hold their fans accountable for something, you know, whatever that is. The lack of respect that the audience has for them, not that he needs to be respected because he's Ian MacKaye or he's in the headlining band, but just be fucking chill to everyone. Like, don't be a dick. And they're playing Fugazi. It's Fugazi songs. They're not going to play Minor Threat, so just fuck off. And I was like, oh, that's rad that he just talked shit to that guy that paid to see him. And that really changed. That stuck with me. And I was like, all right, this is cool shit. I'm down. And then we started our first band, and yeah, it was all kind of went from there. But there's a lot of like little milestones, I think, that kind of influenced me along the way. I don't know. How'd
you get into like the more spastic, crazier style of metal and hardcore?
Well, I would say like I was obsessed with Septic Death.
Okay.
From the skate rock comp. It was weird because I was like in the Cramps and stuff, and like, you know, the Misfits, and I like Earth AD a lot out of the Misfits, but it was when I heard Septic Death's Thaw, that song Thaw, I was like, fuck, this is wild shit. And then I just got into like Sore Throat and obviously like Napalm Death, and then kind of ventured into like Carcass and whatever, and not that that's spastic, but
it's like faster blast like, beat stuff.
Yeah, and I was obsessed with like blast beats and just weird, abrasive songwriting, I guess. And then I tripped out on like Infest and Crossed Out. Crossed Out was the jam, you know, and it was like, oh shit, you can write totally absurd music that's fully brutal and also has tons of hooks and like call it music. Like, this is great. My mind is fucked up and I completely can like understand this. So it was a trip. So I mean, you know, I was like 15, I think, when I first saw Crossed Out in my first band, and but that was like really, really informative to me to hear these very short songs that were just absurdly written. Yeah. And then the aesthetics of it, like seeing Crossed Out as a kid was like seeing a fucking serial killer, you know, on stage. And then off stage, you're like, oh, you're super cool, and you guys are treating me normal and not murdering me. So I was like, oh, there's like an aspect, because, you know, as a kid, I was thinking metal was like scary and spooky and like, I don't know, whatever, like fucking metal stuff people do. And I was like, these guys just look like they're gonna go change your oil and stab you in the neck, you know. And I was like, that's fucking rad. That's like fully really the actual real scary shit. So I don't know. And then again, like earlier we had mentioned like people's influences, and I think influences are always more important non-musical. People are like, what's your musical influences? And I'm like, well, you know, and I'll name up all this shit that's not musical. And I think that's
before we jump into that, because I want to get I want to get into that too, like what we talked about off camera. But one thing I want to ask you is like, was there a person in your life that kind of showed you that path, or did you just like dumb luck find it yourself? Did you have like a family member, friend, or an older person that, you know, a guy at the record store was telling you to like, hey, check this album out, you know? Like how did you get that journey started? Like how'd you find the Cramps?
Yeah, well, okay. So for one, I remember like I think I'll go ahead and just give it all a Thrasher. I think that was like the
Okay.
big thing because I was really into skateboarding before I got into like quote unquote punk. I was into like weird art and weird music. Again, predating my skateboarding obsession was seeing that movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off and being obsessed with Sig Sig Sputnik. I was like, what the fuck is that music? This is so wild. I need to know more about that. So I think I was already on this trajectory towards weirdness, but it was Thrasher that kind of did the whole thing because I would watch like these skateboard competition videos, and I went to a I went to one competition in Phoenix and saw, I can't remember if it was Lance Mountain or Mark Gonzalez, but one of them, it's probably Lance Mountain, had a Sam Hain sticker on his hat, his helmet. And I was like, and I just couldn't figure out what it was. And I was like, what is that skull thing? It's so cool. And it was that, just like a little nugget, you know,
Yeah,
like here's this thing, this code. And then I was, that like got me into it. But I would go to this record store. It's a chain in Phoenix called Zia. And there were older people there. They were probably 18. They seemed fucking way older than me. And they were like, kind of like getting me hip to shit. Because I remember finding that Sam Hain sticker and being like, what is this? Can you please can you give me the code? You know, can you help me decipher this code? What is this? I saw this on Lance Mountain's helmet. And then it was like figuring that out. And then next to the Sam Hain sticker was like, the birthday party. What the fuck is this? And they're like, oh. So then it was just like, they kind of helped me out. But with that being said, all of these things that were helping me, Lance Mountain, Zia Records employees, I had my parents, mainly my dad, who was like an alcoholic. He was abusive to my mom. He was like, oh, if you're into punk, you're going to become a heroin addict just like Sid Vicious. And I was like, what? Like, I'm like, I don't think I want to do heroin. And I'm like, you beat up my mom and you think I'm a fucking asshole because I won't play tennis and I don't like girls or whatever it was that he was like rude. You know, I just want to skateboard. I think I should like this punk stuff. Like, if you think it's bad, I'm going to kind of like it. And I remember him like destroying some of my tapes and getting really mad about Misfits, Angel Fuck, and I don't know, Cramps, like Goo Goo Muck. And I was like, dude, you're so lame. Like, I've seen you cheat on my dad. Like, you pass out on the toilet wasted. Like, you fucking wrecked the car. Like, I think I can like this weird shit.
Yeah.
So fuck you. And then it was like, so that was a big thing. Like my parents saying like, this is bad. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's
now
good. I'm
like
going that way now. I'm going right down that hole. Yeah.
Yeah. Joke's on him. I do trip out. I wonder if he was around. It'd be like, oh, look what you did. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
look at me now.
Yeah.
When does the breakdancing come in?
Oh, I already did. I already went through all that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was precursor to all the skateboarding and stuff too, because man, I was like 8 when that happened, and I remember seeing Breakin in the movie theater, and people were breakdancing in the aisles and shit, and like that was, I mean, so like that's okay. Let's go back to when I discovered Sig Sig Sputnik, because I feel like a lot of that early breakdancing stuff, like on Tommy Boy Records, like there was some of that weird like electro pop hip hop stuff happening where it was like I was just really, I mean, I think as any like young child, like hearing laser sounds and shit, I was like, whoa, it's like robots or fucking Star Wars. That's cool. Like musically I was already into that, and then breakdancing was just cool as fuck. But in Phoenix there was like the breakdance heavy metal crossover thing, which was kind of weird because there's a lot of heshers and stuff there. And in the 80s I'd go to these like breakdance competitions at Chuck E. Cheese, and there was like all these heshers, I don't know why, and then all the breakers, but they'd all like get along and just so I was into metal. I loved Ozzy and Iron Maiden and shit like that, Twisted Sister and all that stuff. But then I really also loved all the breakdance stuff, and I loved a lot of the weird hip hop. I loved regular hip hop, but I was, obviously like Run DMC and Beastie Boys, but like earlier than that. But like the weird electronic shit was like kind of my jam. So I think those are, if you think about it, that electronic kind of stuff and the metal stuff merged almost makes the Locust in my brain. So
it's weird because I also came from that background too. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
different journey than you, but it definitely came from like I grew up listening to whatever my parents had on the radio or whatever they were going on. So that's like how I got into music. You know, Michael Jackson and fucking "You Can Call Me Al." That song was so fucking huge for me back in when I was a kid. That
Yeah.
Paul Simon "You Can Call Me Al" song because Chevy Chase was
Yeah.
in it, and
Oh
I like
yeah. I mean, it was Chevy Chase.
yeah, I loved Chevy from like the National Lampoon stuff as a child, and
Yeah.
like the Christmas Vacation was like a movie we always watched. So when that fucking song came out, I was like, oh, he's in that band. And he's not, but you know, I was a kid, so
Yeah.
I didn't know. But yeah, so music was really big for me, and then when I started finding my own music, it was more like rap and hip hop, early '90s rap and hip hop, because I was watching like MTV or BET or VH1, because all those stations at the time played a mix of music. Well, not BET, it was more, you know, centric to black entertainment, like the channel would say, but like VH1 and MTV would, even VH1 would play hip hop back in the day. So I would like watch that, got into breakdancing. I was horrible at it. But you know, at some point that lent me over to getting into nu metal, and then nu metal got me into, you know, or I'm sorry, alternative like 311 and, you know, a little bit of rappy rock stuff. But then when the nu metal craze started coming, I got fully involved with that. And then from there, I just wanted to know like what's the heaviest nu metal, and then heaviest nu metal came into like hardcore, metalcore, and so that's where it opened up for me. I did attend like a couple punk shows. I feel like anyone that listens to hardcore or any of these adjacent genres started with punk rock or something like that, but it was very minimal. I had like maybe a year where I was listening to punk rock, you know, and then I moved right on, found other things, but then I just fell down a rabbit hole. And like I said earlier, you know, you ruin your life listening to hardcore and metal, because I think like the people that listen to hardcore and metal, at least like more underground metal, right? Because metal's so huge. Those people like just become obsessed with it, and that's basically like a part of their identity, I think, you know.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
The metal community is very critical.
Hardcore is too, though. Hardcore is too.
Yeah, I guess I can attest to that, because people just shit on the Locust all the time. There's that band that I've never heard them before, but Insect Warfare, they were always like trashing the Locust for being false grindcore, and I'm like, we never called ourselves grindcore. So joke's on you for making a T-shirt or whatever the fuck it was that
Hey,
had us on it.
Free press.
Yeah,
Free press. Free press.
yeah. They're kind of like the Lambgoat of publications then, huh?
I was thinking when you're talking about
Oh no, they're like the Lambgoat comments. Sorry.
comment.
Go
Yeah.
on.
I was thinking when you were talking about Ian, you know, hazing that guy in the crowd. I was like, he probably started the first Lambgoat commenter. You know, he went home, commented. I mean, it was probably too early. Yeah, it was like '80s. But you know, 10 years later, he probably joined the internet and like started doing shitty comments.
I bet he's got like a burner account for Instagram just to talk shit.
Dude, a lot of people do, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
So you guys, your documentary is streaming as of last month, right? You're streaming your documentary. So what all is that? You know, Don't Fall in Love with Yourself. What is that kind of about? Like, if you were explaining it to someone who hasn't watched it, what would you categorize that as?
Well, it's a documentary about me and some of my friends and like this sort of world that we come through like 31G. I feel like the documentary subject shifted a little bit during the making of it. So as much as it like focuses on me, I think it's largely more about 31G and the Locust. And now that after Gabe Serbian passed away, I feel like it should have been about Gabe more than me. But I see what it is, and I recognize it. And yeah, I would say it's just a weird documentary that is about me, which is also very weird. I don't know if I'm like it's warranted for me to have that, but I appreciate it. And it's crazy because I've been to a few of the screenings, and like there are some people that were like, I had no idea what this was or who you were, and this is, and they got something from it. It wasn't like only made for the weirdos that like the Locust. Like this was like, you know, these like normal like suburban Christian moms or whoever, you know, like I mean, it's been like the whole spectrum of people are like, what the fuck? I had no idea who you were, and this is some crazy shit. So I think the director John Nix did a great job in delivering the message or making the story, and I think that it like has resonated with people very very well. I still feel a little weird about it, just because I don't I mean, I'm a Leo, so I like the attention, but I'm also like, like I don't know. It seems like a little bit too much upfront attention, so it's weird. But yeah, it's about me and the Locust and 31G. So
And 31G is coming up on like what, your 30th year, huh?
yes, fucking a, yeah, that's weird. Yeah,
Not to
yeah,
throw it out there on you, but yeah, you know.
yeah.
How did that all start? I mean, because you know you're a much younger man than back in those days, and was it? I mean, was it always around, or was there lulls where you know maybe like hiatus times, or did you keep it cranking the entire 30 years straight? And if so, how did you even do that?
Yeah, there was no lulls or like full cranking. I mean, it was kind of like, and there was like a lot of things where I had to adjust in real time and figure out what to do. And there's a lot of times where I'm like, fuck this. But then I'm like, well, shit, I can't throw in the towel because like all of these other things, what do I do with them after I stop? Like when another label that I worked with a lot was GSL. When GSL folded, like all of the Locust stuff just came back to us to do with what we wanted. So I kept thinking, like, if 31G folds, like, what am I gonna do with all the bands that I'm
Yeah,
on?
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
one thing to be like, here, take your shit, bands, but then I'm like, what about my own shit? Like, what am I gonna do? So, but yeah, 31G started kind of out of necessity because I was dealing with like subpar
Mm-hmm.
labels that were like fucking around and not paying or like doing weird shit like making merch without asking
Yeah.
or changing the record cover art, like just kind of whack ass shit. And I was like, this sucks. I'm gonna just do that but better. And if I fuck up, I can criticize myself and correct it. And so I immediately found a way to get through um the navigating through how to start a business and I still am learning because I'm not very business savvy. So like for instance, when I'm on tour with Def Club and Brian doesn't want to do merch, it falls on me and I'm like, dude, you do not want me to do merch because I just give shit away. And it's even right now, like the last podcast I did, it was with someone from that band Z's who I love and they're on 31G, but I was like, those records didn't sell. So anyone listening to this podcast, best message me and I'll fucking send you a free Z's record.
Yeah.
So I mean that's like not the best business practice, but it also helped me see how many people are actually paying attention because they got a free record out of it. But like I think there's ethical capitalism. I identify with aspects of um
I'm glad you're saying this. Go ahead.
yeah, I think there's ethical see 'cause I feel like I feel like on paper I would be an anarchist or a socialist,
Mm-hmm.
and capitalism doesn't really mesh with those too well. But I think there is ethical capitalism. I also think humans are just fucked at this point. But there is a way to navigate elements of capitalism and be ethical, and I for survival purposes, for to create art and so on and so forth, which are not that my art is something or art that I'm part of is like this big deal, but like
It
there
is
is
to
art
certain
that's
people, though. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing about you guys in bands and stuff like that, and that is very humble of you to say. But like I was just
well,
talking with Fall guys, like they didn't realize that they hadn't been around for years, and they teased it, and then everyone lost their shit. So it's like people do like, and I'm sure like if like the Locust, you guys did the Brain Dead collaborative release or whatever, and like I bought one. You know what I mean? So it's like
yeah,
when and I hadn't seen the Locust probably. I don't know if I ever saw the Locust. I definitely remember vividly like whatever Hellfest DVD you guys were on, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I
it
remember
was
just
terrible.
well, no,
Yeah,
I
I'm
mean I
sorry.
remember seeing it, and I was just like going, what is that? And
No, it was terrible.
yeah, did you guys ever come to Jacksonville by chance?
Yeah, we played Jack Rabbits or something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's
We
still
played a
around.
few. We played a few places there.
The Imperial is
Um,
probably where if I saw you, it'd probably be at the Imperial.
okay, yeah, I don't remember what the name of it was, but we've been there a few times. Very violent. What were we talking? Oh, so yeah, but I don't know. I don't ever know if it's like a bit. What I do, I don't think is that big of a deal on a huge
Right,
spectrum.
right, on the
Like
grand
I
scale.
do get people saying like, "You saved my life," and I'm like, "Fuck, that's wild. That wasn't my intention," but I'm really glad that happened.
Yeah,
And that's like so much wealth in the, hearing someone say that.
yeah.
Like, I'm very grateful for that. But
But in
I don't
order for
know.
you to continue to do your thing, you have to have the ethical capitalism to fund, whatever it is. Because a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast, like we talked about prior, and we'll get into your yoga and dog stuff that we had mentioned earlier. But a lot of this is like I'd like to show the world or fan base because I was also guilty of this early on when I was younger. Like you see a band, and in your example, I'll use Van Halen, right? So you'll see like Van Halen, and you'll have that early on. You'll see bands like Van Halen in your youth, in your musical journey, right? You'll see these like bigger bands, and then you'll fall down the cracks, hopefully to more underground indie bands. But like for me, I saw these rock stars, quote unquote, right? And I started going to shows that are much smaller in our little area of the woods, and I still thought the same thing. Like, oh, these are rock stars. They're signed to a record label, right? And they tour. Rock stars, man. They're probably like, that's all they do is fucking jam and play shows and write music. And that was so far from the case, or, par from the course. There are some bands in our world that can do that, but most, don't. So where was I going with this? Ethical capitalism. Yes, that's where we're going. So there does have to be like some kind of, transaction between artists and the people ingesting the art, whatever it is. And like I also have issues with capitalism, but in the long run, it's like, how else can the artist maintain, or how else can anything really go on in a world that seems to just be more bland and all manufactured and just, kind of more of a consumer capitalism type situation where it's just like, buy this new cool thing, or you really need this thing. And it's less more so on like arts and art-based kind of, commerce.
That is a very good observation, but also the fact that like people are just shitting on the planet for like, man, okay, so like, not to bring Ian back into the fold, but I really do feel like Fugazi is a good moral compass for a band. Maybe if you're not into their music, that's one thing, but the way they worked as a band is very informative for me, at least. And even in later years, I remember like this has like been, I think, probably 10 years or maybe 8 years, something where like Coachella kept saying like, we want Fugazi to play, and they offered him like $10 million, I don't know, fucking whatever amount of dollars. And I remember Ian saying like, maybe it wasn't 10 million, maybe it was just a 1 million, I don't know. Still, it was a lot of money, more
insane.
than I have.
Yeah, that's insane.
But they said like, Ian said, oh no, there's no way. The next time Fugazi plays, it'll be for free in DC. And I was like, dude, that's the fucking shit, man. Like, just that's such a boss move, and I really appreciate that. And yeah, sure, Ian is at the financial place where he can say that, where like it would take a lot to pry me away from an offer of $1 million.
Of course, as it should.
Yeah, and not that I'm not moral or ethical about my decisions, but I'm not financially stable enough to be like, that's cool. But with that being said, I have a different perspective on like, if I got $1 million, I wouldn't say unethically, because I don't really have an issue playing Coachella. I've done it, and it was fucking a couple $100 or whatever, but like I'll still play it, But if someone's like, hey, would Def Club play? I mean, Def Club could play Coachella for fucking $20 probably. But if they were to say like something, I'd be like, yes, and that $1 million would translate into something
far better,
bigger,
far different. Yeah.
So there's that, but I think that like when I trip out on like seeing bands that make merch that's like sweatshop, shirts. Maybe they don't give a fuck, but like, oh, you don't want to spend the extra $1 on the shirt, but you'd rather just save $1 and have some fucking little kid in Afghanistan put your garment together, or wherever it's fucking made, And so I trip out on like just the little things, like the way fucking Fugazi didn't even have shirts. That seems like a pretty crazy thing in itself,
Yeah.
So there's there's so many things. I mean, I still wrestle with like making vinyl. It's not a great thing for the planet to have that extra plastic, but it's not throwaway plastic. It's not a water bottle that you're going to toss in the trash. It's on a fucking shelf that you're going to probably keep for the rest of your life, and that will like this is my my retirement right here. All
Just
this
sell
shit.
that out. Yeah.
I don't have I don't have a retirement fund, but I'll sell my test pressings and probably be able to fucking put myself in a hospice or whatever. So,
Well, at least you're
it's just
planning ahead. You're planning ahead, Justin. That's good. That's good.
yeah, the ethical capitalism has made its way into my brain. It's burrowed in there. So I do constantly think about like what my motivation is and where I gather things and how I put them out into the world. So yeah.
That's good. Who is Justin outside of music and the bands and the label?
I don't know. Those do define me quite a bit.
Yeah, I figured. What are your interests outside of those things?
I mean,
granted, I know a lot of your time probably is wrapped up in those projects.
Yeah,
all those
and
things.
it all like is encompassing to me, in a sense. And I realize like my ability to reach people through music also helps me communicate other things that I am passionate about. I mean, like a lot of like social justice and activist work has tied into it. I mean, for like a long time when the Locust and Some Girls were on tour, we'd always have Planned Parenthood come out and table our shows. Those are really important elements, I think, beyond music that kind of tied in. Or like, I don't know, whatever, like my reach on let's say like something stupid like Facebook, and they're like, you know how Facebook does that thing like, what's your birthday, blah blah blah, fundraiser, and I'm like, I don't know, like I'll donate to this border angels, that like people to help the immigrants crossing the border, or like a cocker spaniel rescue, or fucking whatever, like I feel like my reach through music helps me with the things that I'm passionate about that are non-musical, and it's all kind of encompassing to some extent.
So what's your free time spent on?
My free time is usually hanging out with my dog and doing yoga. Those are the two main things that I do, because my free time also is like, I'm going to go to the studio and we're going to work on another record or another song or the next episode of this podcast, or whatever the things are that I do. I'm constantly, my free time is like when people be like, I want to binge watch this blah, blah, blah on Netflix. And I'm like, well, I could go and I could work on this really cool project at the studio. And like, that's kind of radder than watching, I don't even know what fucking show. I'm not going to name off some shows, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
any show, Netflix, Hulu, cable TV.
Yeah, I am a sucker for the Star Wars spinoff shows, which all are sucking pretty fucking bad.
Talking about like the new ones, like Mandalorian type stuff, or like just any kind of Clone Wars cartoon thing.
Mandalorian was good, but then there's like a new one that's happening right now that is dog shit, and I'm like, I'll watch it because I'm like, there's a little hope that there'll be something, and it's like, nope, that sucks.
I kind of gave up on them after the trilogy, the original
feel like
trilogy.
I should fucking give up, man. But I saw Star Wars in the movie theater in 1977. I was 2.5. It's my earliest memory I have of being alive on this planet, and it was crazy that I can remember it. I was with my dad, and I remember being in the front row. Everything was sold out except the front row, and I was so little, and I was just like, whoa, fucking freaking out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I do whatever. Like, yeah, whatever presents itself, I do it.
What kind of dog is it?
Free time.
What kind of dog you have? Cocker Spaniel?
Yeah.
That's what
He's downstairs. I'm actually fostering this one, so let me just show you real quick. If anybody wants to adopt this guy,
there you go.
Moose. Can you see him?
Yeah. Little black brown guy, chocolate guy.
Yeah, he's asleep. We just started fostering him a couple days ago, 2 days ago. So I'm trying to find him a home. But
I got mine right there. I got a 13-year-old.
I know.
I got a 13-year-old boxer just laying there all day.
They're the best. I really do think they're like little they're little teachers,
For sure.
And that's it's so rad.
Yeah. I've definitely grown up as a human being having to take care of another being in general for 13 years.
Yeah.
It's a good segue into maybe thinking about having a kid, but I'm not there, you know what I mean? But now I know at least, I can at least make sure they won't die,
Yeah.
I have the responsibility to do that.
I always think when Coachella asked me to play for $1 million, I'll adopt a kid at that point. But until then,
yeah, you got to be financially ready for all that shit, man. That's so expensive.
Yeah,
especially
I heard that you don't and that you make it work. But I'm like, that's cool. I've already kind of like not been.
Yeah, but you know what though, Justin, we're 40 years old. We're plus 40, right? We have the opportunity to be financially stable when we do have a kid. Most people are forced, right? They're like, oh, I'm early 20s or late teens or whenever, and I'm not really set in life, and here we go. I gotta have this. Yeah. I gotta have this along with for the ride. And again, people do it. My parents did it. Your parents probably did it. Everyone's parents probably did it. But
totally.
now that I have the ability to choose if I want and when, I'm gonna definitely take that.
But that's kind of a weird thing to think about, because I always tripped out on like people like, you went on tour when you were 15. How did you do that? And I was like, I don't know.
Just went.
I actually don't know how we did it. I don't know how we paid gas in the van. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And that's a weird thing to think about, because I do remember the first tour I went on, coming back into like Southern California through the Grapevine over these mountains. We stopped at this Denny's. This was like, what year would this be? 90. It was 90, I guess. And I remember we were like, this is crazy shit. It was a bunch of us, and we were broke, and we were eating at Denny's, and we didn't have enough to pay our bill. And it was so wild, because before we got to the point to where like, do we fucking ditch this place and bail? Yeah. The waitress came up and said, hey, this woman at the counter over there wants to cover your bill, so it's on her. And then we look over, and this little old lady waves to us, and I was like, what the fuck just happened? And so we went over there, and she's like, you guys look wild. Yeah. You guys look so wild. And I thought I'd buy you breakfast. You're just like, fuck, thank you.
That's insane.
Because otherwise we were going to be ditching.
Yeah. You really helped out Denny's today.
It was
Or IHOP, whatever the hell you said.
Yeah, it was so crazy how it worked out. And she was so sweet, and she was just like, I don't have anyone to take care of, and I just figured all you youngsters look like you could use a meal. And we're like, dude, you don't understand.
You have no idea.
And back then we probably looked fucked, like like in 90, like with green hair and shit and a mohawk or whatever the fuck we had. Like she's probably like, fuck these guys. Most people were like, fuck these guys, except her.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about like a violent show and stuff like that earlier, or you mentioned it. My curiosity always, when I speak to people in bands, especially like bands that sometimes have mosh parts or can have violent, shows or crowds. I'm like, right now, currently in my age, I am stuck between liking moshing and not liking moshing. Like, I like to be around it, I like to see it and all that stuff. I don't do it anymore, but also part of me is like, the kids that are moshing these days are like fucking going above and beyond, trying to like murder everybody, it feels like. Whereas before, like I think back to like the AFI video where they had like the kids moshing in the gym floor or something like that, and everyone had ample room. You had ample room to do your ninja fighting, and now it's like the ninja fighting just is like, this is a stupid reference, but like Beyblades are like the things where you would spin in the little ring, and they would hit each other and bang, 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 and one would fly out of the ring eventually, like something like that. That's what it's like in the pit now. All these fucking ninjas are just like hitting each other, banging off of it, like hitting the wall, and crowd killing. Crowd killing's gotten super huge these days, which doesn't make sense to me. I hated it back then. You know what I mean? I liked moshing, but hated crowd killing. So
that's a term, crowd killing.
Oh God, yeah. That's where you like would run from one side of the pit to the other, and you fucking you jump and throw your fucking hand back, and you hit someone 3 rows back, or you purposely kind of like quote unquote somewhat target somebody. That's kind of like a crowd kill. But
that sounds stupid.
Agreed, but it's big, and it's big. I don't understand it, and it's gotten so much prevalent. You know what I mean? It's way more prevalent than it used to be, I feel like. But I wonder if it's if it keeps people from getting into certain styles of heavy music, but it probably draws a lot of people too.
It's weird because a lot of times people that are outside of our world will say, I don't know, like this yoga instructor, she's like, oh, what happens at your shows is wild, and you're like, it's not really.
It's not. Yeah.
And I think maybe she looks at like shit like what you're talking about, where like if you go to a Def Club show, it's like, yeah, people are kind of like getting a little wild, but it's not like no one's doing ninja shit. I never, when I see the ninja shit, it's never while I'm playing. I'm like, what the fuck? This band has ninja shit going on, and it looks pretty silly, but it is what it is. But I don't know, like I remember tripping out. Like I had this perception of Converge, and like when some girls toured with Converge, it was we were very. Some girls were interesting because we would write a song and we'd be like, all right, mosh part, instead of doing it 4, do it 1, and then stop the song. So like people be like, yeah, mosh, and then you stop after 1, and you're like, what the fuck? And then just that's like what we're into. Like that's funny to us or like interesting. But when we went on, I had this like perception of Converge and how people were, a little bit their fans were violent. But I remember seeing Converge and right after, I guess it was like right after I don't remember what year it was. After the pandemic opened or stopped or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just I have COVID right now, actually, for my first time. So it's funny. When the pandemic stopped, even though I have COVID, I remember seeing them in Austin, and I thought like I watched them from the side of the stage, and I watched a lot. I saw a lot of women in the crowd. I saw trans people stage diving off of the monitors. I saw it, and it seemed very inclusive and very passionate, aggressive, but not violent in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really nice to see that. And I feel like for the most part, that is what, at least with the Locust and some girls, and now today, like with Def Club or whatever band, we've really tried to hone in on that and not have it be like dudes fucking up people. Like that sounds stupid. Like I want it to be go crazy, but just do it like respectfully. And
right.
I think there's a way to do that.
Yeah.
So
it's just don't push mosh, I guess. They don't want to push mosh, which I get. That's like a butt rock kind of thing to do. Like, just pile into, like hit somebody with your shoulder. I don't know, like the fucking sumo wrestling that they do in the big rock pits. But yeah, I think it might be a little overzealous these days, But again, TikTok and Instagram, they just started. I think those platforms really in the last year or two started like you'll see like mosh content start popping up in those last couple of years, and that I think is kind of driven people towards hardcore or metal. But I also think that they think that that's what you're supposed to do, and sometimes it's like, no, don't do that.
Well, I would trip out too, like in the hip hop world, because well, Planet B, I guess, kind of fits a little bit into hip hop, and we've been working with like proper hip hop artists, and just meeting people that were like, that shit's wild. What you do is fucking wild, and you're like, it's not that crazy, and then like kind of seeing how they articulate that into like working with us or vice versa, like because it. I'm a big fan of like cross genre bills, and I think that's like also very much a San Diego thing too, or Southern California, where you'll have a hip hop artist on with Def Club or whatever, and everybody kind of gets along, and no one acts like a fuckhead, but everyone can act very passionate in whatever way that is, and it seems cool. I just feel like when you just are straight hardcore and you're just kind of there to fuck around and be a dick, you're just gonna be that thing. So
yeah. I say that as I went to a hardcore show last night, straight edge hardcore show, but for the most part.
What bands were that? Was it?
The ones that Sun Touch House is a local band, but they're kind of, I think they're signed to Days. Sun Touch House they're really good. They're kind of like in the vein of Converge, kind of hardcore, they're in that arena. The other one was like a hardcore band from Tampa, and they were Six Paths, I think is theirs. The two main ones were Morning, hardcore band from UK, Morning, and then Magnitude, North Carolina straight edge hardcore. So yeah, I got a little, ninja fighty in there, but again, I expect that going to that show. I just don't want to be involved, or I don't want to have to like, suffer the consequences of someone fucking trying to crowd kill somebody, So that's where I'm at. But I also don't like to be in the back, I like to be in the fucking front and the shit, that's where I was.
Hey. Oh, sorry. That's Moose, the dog I'm trying to foster. He's upset. Hey, so or that I am fostering. I'm trying to get adopted, but it's rude. Okay.
I can't hear it, so it's all good.
Okay. Fucking hey, it's rude. What were we saying? Oh, well, I just toured the West Coast with Converge, and I didn't see any of that bullshit at all. So it might be a coastal thing or regional thing too, because I feel like that kind of stuff really doesn't happen a lot in Southern California. Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Go for it. We got dogs barking. It's all good. I don't know if you heard mine earlier. I got a couple little yappy dogs here, but it's all good. Welcome back, Justin.
So yeah, moshing is weird sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a coastal thing too. So
It might be. I don't know. I mean, I see videos like Sound and Fury, which is like a legit hardcore festival, and it gets pretty wild there. But again, I don't know. I don't know where it all comes from. But yeah, it is here regardless of whether we like it or not, Justin. So it's part of the culture, you know. But yeah, all right. Do you have anything else you want to kind of get out before we kind of cut it off here? Anything you're working on? Anything that you want to plug? I know you got the documentary you can check out, which is streaming now. Is it streaming on what platforms?
It's on Vimeo and THX. What I don't know what that's called. Something else. The three initials. I don't know. I'm not really. It's on Vimeo. Just go there, and it will be on Tubi eventually. I think like maybe in December or something on Tubi, which is like pretty cool thing.
It's through
but right now it's on Vimeo and one other streaming thing. I think if you just go on to all the links are on Instagram on the Don't Fall in Love with Yourself Instagram profile to everything. So
and we'll have those links in the description and everything like that. So if anyone's interested in watching that or checking out one of the fucking mini bands Justin's been a part of or moonlighted in at some point, check it out. If you don't mind just hanging out for a bit when I close his mother down, and then I'll let you go. But I want to say on here, thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for everything that you do, as well as for the community and the industry and this, that, the other. Thank you for the kind words, even though we spent 20 minutes in the beginning of the podcast talking about how bad the comments were and all that stuff. I'm sure that'll be a good chunk for somebody out there. But yeah, it was great having you on the show today, man.
You know what? Thank you. And I would like to just reiterate, like I liked Lambgoat, or was I appreciated Lambgoat for what it was, but when you took it over and I saw people criticizing you, it made me feel good. Like I felt, like I was like, all right, this is gonna be fucking cool. Like I'm psyched. And then obviously you cover my shit, and I was like, that's fucking rad. Like I don't know. I just want to say thanks to you and to the anonymous person, because I don't know if it's multiple ones. You're a chicken shit, and I dare you to say it to my fucking face.
That won't happen.
I'll ninja kick you or something or whatever. So.
Yeah, we know that shit ain't happening. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome, dude. Thanks.